Welcome to Thrive Deeper, an ongoing conversation with Dr. Matthew Jacoby, author of the Thrive Bible Reading Guides, teaching pastor and leader of the Psalmist band Sons of Korah. Join us as we go deeper into the Bible, discussing the passages as we read them together with Thrive. Now here's your host, DJ Payne.
How you doing? DJ here, and so excited that we are almost at the end of Ezekiel. That's right, episode 5, and this is our second last episode on the book of Ezekiel. We're getting stuck into chapter 37, all the way to the end of Ezekiel in this episode, and this is where we start tying the threads between what is Ezekiel prophesying about and the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, and this book. What are the connections, and how does that affect our view of the end times, and what should be our view of the end times? I know, big questions, big questions in this one. Matt and I sat down and got into it. So after this break, we're going to pick up right into that conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Thrive Deeper. Someone was asking me about the, why, the sort of the dynamics of the podcast, like what we do. And I was explaining it like imagine that there's, not imagine, I was like saying, what was I saying? Like, pretty much you've got two Bible nerds, who are, but one of them's a professional paid Bible nerd and one of them's an amateur Bible nerd. That's me. I'm the amateur. You're the professional Bible nerd. You get to do this as a job. I'm just like any pursuit or passion. I'm the amateur who gets to do it in his spare time. I don't know if that's a good enough, illustration to what we are.
Maybe a professional, but one never feels like an expert in these things.
No. Yeah, exactly. That's a great thing about. There's a great thing about the Bible. It's inexhaustible of how far you can go into it. All right. We are. This is it. We are into the final episode about the book of Ezekiel as we're going through it in Thrive. We have followed the amazing dramatic life of Ezekiel the prophet in Babylon during the exile, the fall of Jerusalem, and as we were saying in the last episode, everything changes around the chapter 33, where all the prophecies that Ezekiel have given since the age of 30 that he's been doing in Babylon about what he's been seeing and what God has been telling him has now been fulfilled. We see that and the people know that he's been going, and he turns a corner and starts giving prophecies about the future that happens not just in his lifetime, happened in Christ's lifetime, happens in our lifetime, and then even goes into the future, beyond, even to the beyond. So we finished off with Ezekiel in the Valley of Dry Bones, seeing the beautiful illustration that is. But it also goes in that same chapter there in 37. It goes beyond just the Valley of Dry Bones. He then gets this is where it gets a little bit beyond, again, my amateur rank level of understanding, talking about the 12 tribes of Israel coming together again,
which is an important question because in the first part of chapter 37, he's had this vision that is a vision of basically the resurrection of the covenant people. Yeah. So the natural question is, so the restoration of the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah. That's the natural progression. And the answer is, well, yes. Yes.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? What, you don't know?
I'm hoping you would know. I have no idea. Okay. I mean, there's so many different theories about what he could be talking about.
So let me read what it says from verse 22, I think. It says, I will make them one nation. So he's saying, I'm going to and he gets him to get a stick and put the two parts of the stick together.
Yeah.
And God is saying, I'm going to, in verse 21, it says, I will take the Israelites out of the nations wherever they've gone. I will gather them from all around and bring them back to their own land. I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel. there will be one king over all of them. So again, you get this return to the messianic prophecies, the one king. And they will never again be two nations or divided into two kingdoms, as we know they were with Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Mm-hmm. As we know, Israel, the 10 tribes of Israel, I think this is important background.
Yeah.
If people haven't caught up with this. In 722, the Assyrians came and destroyed the northern kingdom.
Yeah.
And they were scattered off into exile.
And so even to take it back before that, the Jewish people, the descendants of Abraham, God's chosen people, had split.
That's right.
After the death of Solomon.
Yeah, that's right.
And so there was the followers of Solomon, the Davidic, peoples of the south, otherwise known as Jerusalem, and Judah, and then the people of the north, the vast majority, the 10 tribes of the north, following other kings, Jewish kings. That was the tribe they called that. Basically, the loose term for that is the 10 tribes of Israel.
That's right. So they're referred to as Israel, or often Ephraim, or sometimes Joseph as well, because the two major tribes were two sons of Joseph. And then you've got Judah, which had a Benjamin absorbed into it. So these two tribes that became Judah, they of course become known as the Jews. That's where we get that word from. So this is the issue here. What about those tribes that were scattered in 722 under the Assyrians? And he is saying here, verse 22, I will make them one nation in the land of the mountain of Israel. There'll be one king over all of them, and they will never again be two nations or divided into two kingdoms. They will no longer defile themselves with their idols and vile images or any of their offences, for I will save them from their sinful backsliding. I will cleanse them. They will be my people and I will be their God. Then he says, my servant David will be king over them and they will all have one shepherd. So it comes back to this idea. Down a bit further, they will live in the land where your ancestors lived. They and their children and their children's children will live there forever, interestingly. Because the covenant that he made with them initially was an everlasting covenant. It's like, for a while, no, it's actually, it's an everlasting covenant. Actually, ultimately, it's bigger than just the land because, of course, Jesus talks about inheriting the earth. So it's this idea continues, but is even expanded. I will make a covenant of, so he says here, and David, my servant, will be their prince forever. I will make a covenant of peace with them. It will be an everlasting covenant. I will establish them and increase their numbers, and I will put my sanctuary among them forever. My dwelling place will be with them. So the question is, what is this talking to? In what sense because the difficulty here is that, in an important sense, they disappeared, as a distinct people group.
Yeah. And have I got it right, Matt, that, not only did they disappear, but they were assimilated into...
Yeah, for the most part, they were.
Into other cultures. And this is where we get, when we fast forward, about 600 years from the time of Ezekiel, when we have the time of Christ, do we get the Samaritans? Is that part of from that region of what the northern people were assimilated into, and they had this sort of half worship of God?
So Samaritans were sort of a mixture between some of the Israelites that remained, and because Assyrian people from the area of Assyria came and were settled in that area, and then they intermarried, and so you had this mixed people group. Well, the same largely would have happened when Israel was scattered among the nations, is that they're absorbed into the nation. Of course, the whole purpose of this military tactic of exile for a people was to take at least the leading peoples out of the land and cause them to assimilate so that they actually lose their national identity. And we actually don't hear of Israel again, really. We don't hear anything of them. Certainly some of them may have kept their distinct identity, but it seems that most are lost. So, and particularly if we think still in terms of some future time, I mean, what could this involve? I mean, I think at the very least, and it could be a lot of things, and actually I'm going to say I don't know.
Yeah.
Because actually, when we talk about how things are going to be fulfilled in the future, it's actually, I think, unwise to say, "Oh, yeah, I'll tell you how it's going to happen."
Yeah, exactly.
We basically, we know what we're told, but how that actually fleshes out, and what that fulfillment looks like. I think we've got to be a little careful with that, not to get too attached to one particular vision of what that looks like, because it, could come out in a number of ways. But at the very least, I think the go into all the world and make disciples, and the bringing in of the nations essentially fulfills this.
Yes.
Because it's going out to all the nations and because actually, the northern 10 tribes were assimilated into the nations. They became part of those nations that are then being drawn in. So at the very least, it could well be more than that. And there are a number of theories about the more. But at the very least, I think that's...
Can we say, and I'm throwing this a bit of a curveball at you, because I have heard over the years some fringe theories that do get people get fascinated with.
Yeah.
And slowly they become obsessed with, these type of things. And it's always scary when you sort of get told a theory and you think, oh, I've got hidden knowledge nobody else has understood. That some of these lost tribes of Israel end up becoming other nations or peoples.
Yeah, that's right.
I've heard that, the people in Britain were one of the lost. I've heard that this nation over here were lost. Right? Yeah. This particular race, this particular type of people. That's not the point.
No, it's not. You've heard a lot of theories.
As an amateur, I get to dig into the really weird stuff out here.
You've heard a lot of theories, and I've heard those theories too. And that, they're theories. It's when they become more than theories, when people actually base, British Israelism, for example, is
or even part of the Mormon faith was that one of the lost tribes were American Indians, were the Native Americans. So it does. I mean, we sort of go, these are crazy theories. No, well, holy moly, there's whole groups
historically significant theories, but they are. They're theories, and they're interesting because we think about what happened to these tribes. Look, at the end of the day, we don't really know for sure. No. Actually, we don't really know for sure what this fulfillment is going to look like, what shape.
But we do get an echo of it again in the book of Revelation. This is where Ezekiel now is beginning to give that prophetic language, that sort of, the ultimate prophetic language, where we see Revelation picking up on a lot of these same themes.
It was interesting because I recently read through the book of Revelation, and then I've come to the book of Ezekiel. Actually, Revelation was the last book that I have actually read before Ezekiel, just in my own reading. And I have been struck in Ezekiel by how much of the book of Ezekiel is reflected, not only reflected, but quoted from outright in the book of Revelation. And yes, of course, this idea of the 12 tribes, it comes up again in the vision that John has, where he numbers the 12 tribes of Israel. Well, I mean, you've still got an interpretive problem there, because what
does this mean?
Yeah, there are a number of ways of interpreting that, and we're not sure. So, he hears the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, and then he looks, and he sees a vast multitude, and
is the 144,000.
And there's is the 144,000? I mean, the same as the vast multitude, because he hears one, and then he looks, and then he sees the vast multitude, that this is all peoples from all nations. Is the 12, is this a way of signifying completeness? Look, it may well be. And as I said, I think the very least with this is that the going out of the gospel to all the nations.
Yes.
And the drawing in of peoples from all nations, I think at least, covers this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agreed. Yeah. All right, now we don't want to get bogged in. We're flying through. We've got to finish.
We could get bogged in some of this stuff.
Oh my goodness, so many rabbit trails here. We want to finish the book of Ezekiel, so let's move into this is where it gets pretty heavy, and we're going to have a lot of I don't knows. I think in this part here, chapter 38 and 39. Yeah. Sort of gets that, like we've heard in the previous books of Ezekiel, these judgments on other nations.
Yeah.
Yes, God is doing something with Israel. He's doing something here. But then we get these things. Now we get the ultimate one with Gog and Magog.
Yeah.
And this is heavy going here.
And it's clearly at a level that is definitely projecting forward to a sort of final. Clearly, what is pictured here is a kind of a final battle. I think for even in Ezekiel's time, that's how it's being understood. It's like the final battle against evil. I mean, the question is, so it says, then the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, and so forth. Now, first of all, I find it interesting here is that God brings them out.
Yep.
It says, I will put hooks in you, and I'm going to bring you out.
Wow.
So who the question is who is Gog of the land of Magog, and there are different suggestions. I mean, there is a Lydian ruler who has a name like this. Perhaps it's him. I mean, one commentator suggests that this is he's talking about Babylon. That it's a veiled way of talking about Babylon because, of course, Ezekiel's in Babylon, so you don't want to be too you don't want to be too inflammatory when you're there. So maybe this is a like John talking about Rome, but
doing it in a yes,
referring to Rome as Babylon.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that same way, that there's definitely an element of John, the book, the book of Revelation. John writing the book of Revelation, he's using coded language about what's going on at the time, and he's looking back to an ancient time. Yeah. Not that ancient. There is definitely a sense of that with Gog and Magog, because Gog and Magog we first hear about back at the beginning of Genesis. Genesis 10, there's these nations.
That's right, yeah.
These ancient nations back then.
Yeah. And in fact, they're actually referred to back in chapter 32 in Ezekiel as a sort of a bygone power in the world.
Exactly.
And so in a sense, probably the best way to understand this is this kind of resurgent power. Mm-hmm. Paul talks about the lawlessness, the system of lawlessness being already with us, bubbling away.
Yeah.
And so, yes, if it is a veiled way of talking about Babylon, and that's, as I said, that's just one of the theories. But even in that case, it's clearly more than just Babylon. This is it's a little bit, it could be similar in the way that we talk about someone being a new Hitler.
Yes.
Is that we use a language from the past.
Yes.
An
ultimate evil.
Yeah, this is like like a new Nazism or something.
Yeah, the spirit of evil that keeps coming up in mankind.
So it's like, it's a bygone power in the world. It's like a resurgent of the same type of thing. And that I think is what, I don't think it's important to necessarily nail down exactly who is he talking about, because actually this is talking about a world power that is been with us before, has always been with it, but at the end of our age, that depends on a couple of things. There's some complexities here. Is going to
rise up again.
Yeah, rise up
in the ultimate
sense. And this is where you get actually a connection with Revelation 19,
big time,
because Revelation 19 depicts this battle, and it's interesting here. First of all, that God draws them out. Now, in Revelation, God does the same thing. You have this picture in the Revelation of God. There's evil in the world. And
can we say I read a description about Gog and Magog that I really, really liked. I'm trying to sum up exactly what we were just talking about. What do you think about this?
I'm moving forward too quickly.
So no. You're moving forward. I just want to make sure this sinks in. That when we read Gog and Magog, because again, all of a sudden you'll see a guy with a chart pointing to a country. Yeah. And you go, no. Slow down.
Yeah, okay.
I read a description once that said that Gog and Magog, as you were saying, like it's the spirit of something. It's an archetype of human rebellion.
Yeah.
The ultimate archetype of that rebellious spirit in man that says, no, I am God.
That's right. Yeah.
I can do it my way.
Yeah.
And it takes different formations in different ages.
Yeah, that's right. In the same way as in the book of Revelation talks about Babylon the Great.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Babylon becomes a sort of a type,
Exactly.
Of a greater archetype, and so and I think it's the same here. Is that Gog and Magog? Because essentially in the book of Revelation, Babylon the Great is Gog and Magog. It's the same. This sort of identification is made there. So yes, as I said before, it's like us talking about this is like a new Nazism or it's a characterization of something bigger than just that. So, I mean, the significant thing here and in the book of Revelation is God draws this out. Yes. It's like the evil is there in the world, but God's going to draw it out for one final showdown. It's in very, very similar terms. So, for example, here, God draws it out and it's there's this resounding defeat, which is what we see in Revelation chapter 19. And also there, we read about Gog and Magog. So that's where we have the same, actually then into chapter 20, where he speaks of Gog and Magog. And it says here, Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says, call out to every kind of bird and all wild animals, assemble and come together around the sacrifice I prepare to you. You will eat the flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, So he's calling on the birds of the air here. At my table you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers. This is quoted from then in the book of at where it says in Revelation chapter 19, it says, I saw an angel standing in the sun who cried out to all the birds who are flying in midair, come gather together for the great feast of our God so that you may eat the flesh of kings and princes. Yeah. And it's a gruesome sort of section, but anyone familiar with scripture listening to that prophecy in Revelation 19 is going to be taken straight. This is what Ezekiel talked about.
Yes, they're seeing the same thing.
And deliberately repeating the same kind of imagery. So this clearly is something that is projecting to the end.
And this is where it gets tricky, because if we try to make a timeline out of Ezekiel, it's like this ultimate Gog and Magog army is defeated and they're killed, and then they're defeated and killed again. And then they're defeated and killed again. And it's like, hang on. It's almost like, those, you see the funny, like a funny joke of a little kid, like, I'm going to kill you and then I'm going to kill you. Like they go on, I'm going to drown you and then I'm going to kill you. It's that sort of thing. Like, it's this ultimate fulfillment. It's an ultimate way of God saying, I'm going to deal with it once and for all. I'm going to deal with it, and it's going to be wiped out in the most, significant way.
It's a huge historical sweep that we have here in the book of Ezekiel, starting with the return. So in a way, the return of Israel to the land in 539 BC, which Ezekiel's not going to see that. He's going to die in exile, but he's talking about things beyond his time. Daniel's going to be around. Yes. He's not going to go back to Israel, but he'll be around to see that event. But that's going to be the beginning of this sort of fulfillment, and so there's a huge sweep of time.
So let's leave Gog and Magog and those gruesome chapters there. Let's move on to this is the home stretch now. From 40 to 48, we have this next section, which is all about hope. It's new. This is the hope of new, and again, that amazing way that prophecy is fulfilled in multiple ways. The first part is we see, Ezekiel gets this detailed, incredibly detailed measurements and everything of this new temple. A whole new thing. And, we go, okay, is it just giving us dimensions for the new temple that will be built? Or is it something more? I mean, he's got an angelic sort of guide showing him around, measuring different things. What's going on?
That's right. So you've got these 9 chapters at the end of Ezekiel that are all about the new temple and the reinstitution of temple worship. And it's
even a new type of worship. It's like it's new, as in like God sort of saying, it's not just like I'm coming back, but it's not. He's alluding to something more than what has gone on.
Consistent with, but certainly more. And even the dimensions of the temple are different. Actually, to the first one. And it's interesting, you can jump on Google and look for pictures of Ezekiel's temple, because people have put that's the best way, actually, because you can read the measurements and try to get your head around it. But I think, if you jump online, there are some actually good illustrations of what this,
how big the temple would be,
of what this could look like. Now, let's start from a sort of at least. And I want to just start from the sort of literary function of this within the book of Ezekiel.
Yes.
Because, of course, the significant thing at the start is the temple's destruction of the temple.
Yeah.
The destruction of the city and the temple. That's a massive, massive thing, right? Yeah. So, hope isn't hope if there isn't there's got to be a new temple. There's got to be a new people and a new temple.
Yeah.
So restoration looks like the restoration of the 12 tribes of Israel and the restoration of the temple for them. Now, restoration actually is going to be much bigger than that. And I think we need to allow here that God is appealing to what is in front of them. They're concerned, what about the 12 tribes of Israel and what about the temple?
Yes.
Well, God is going to do something way beyond the 12 tribes of Israel and way beyond a physical temple.
Yes.
Okay, he's going to,
and I think that's alluded to all the way through.
It's alluded to, yeah. And so we need to allow that actually, it's answering their questions with their kind of imagery and language, but it's, referring to something bigger than that. Not that it could be both. It could be something.
This is what I'm saying. The beautiful aspect of prophecy that answers their questions, but then answers a lot more as well.
So it could be very literal as well as symbolic of something something bigger. So I think that's the important thing. So actually it makes sense that the final chapters finish with this vision of a new temple. And then, of course, within that, we have this vision in chapter 43 of the glory of God returning to the temple. That's, that's important. So, and then the functioning of the priesthood again, this is Ezekiel we're talking about. So that's important
to him.
And so the question is then, we can see then how that works within Ezekiel and how that rounds off this message of hope.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a message of hope if there isn't a restoration of the people and the temple.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? What does this mean from a historical point of view? Because the temple that they do go back to the land and they rebuild the temple. And doesn't look anything like.
No, but it's not the fulfillment of this.
It's not the fulfillment of this.
It's not the fulfillment of this.
In fact, there are aspects of fulfillment of this, like the river the river that flows through the temple. That it's even impossible to see how that could even really work.
Yeah.
Well, not impossible, but it's difficult to see. We need to be careful with that.
Matt, this is where it gets bigger. The picture here gets bigger of just the temple, because we get measurements of the temple. We even get he even says particular names of places.
Yeah.
But it gets bigger. It's like it keeps on growing and growing. And the last couple of chapters, like you said, there's a river. There's a new creation. He mentions the Dead Valley, the Dead Sea Valley, where nothing can grow and nothing is there. All of a sudden, it's
coming alive.
It's Genesis. It's
That's right.
It's like there's this whole new thing. And
you're right on. Yeah.
There's a language there that is multi-leveled in such a way that it's just glorious.
That's right. Yeah.
And so the problem then for us is hang on, how do we interpret this?
That's right. So I think the best way to work with this, and there are a number of views on this, and I think it's, let's work from what we do know back into, and sort of big picture and back into the details. Now, in terms of the specifics of how this works out and how this could have been fulfilled, there are different views on that, and I want to acknowledge those views, and I certainly don't want to discount. I'm not just here to discount any views, but I do want us to grab hold of something that, whatever your view, we can all take away. And what actually is certain here is that God is going to bring about a new creation. Mm-hmm. Is that He has built a temple, the most significant temple. I mean, really, the fulfillment of the imagery of the temple is both Jesus Christ himself in terms of the sacrificial system, but also the church is in a very significant sense, according to what Paul says in Ephesians, that we have been built up to become a holy dwelling of God. So we are the temple. The New Testament church is the temple. Now we can all agree on that, and in a sense,
and that's a very symbolic. Way to interpret
that's a very symbolic way to interpret it, and we referred to that when we talked about Ezekiel 36 and the Spirit of God entering His temple, and in a sense, this is the glory of God entering His temple. But there being a symbolic fulfillment doesn't exclude a literal fulfillment in some sense as well, and this is where we come to theories about could there be a literal fulfillment of this in some future age. And there are, as I said, there are some who would look forward to a time when in a millennial kingdom there will be this rebuilt temple in Israel. That may well be, I'll be, if that happens, I'll be stoked.
You'll be the first one there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll be stoked. There's some tricky things around that because Ezekiel also depicts the resumption of the sacrifices and so forth, and I mean that's difficult from a Christian theological point of view because Christ's sacrifice was once and for all.
Yes,
and so. It really kind of rules out that doesn't. I don't think necessarily rules out the theory because there's some. I just think it's an issue there. Now, that may well be a neat way of seeing this fulfilled, that this rebuilding of a literal temple, and actually among Jewish people.
That's a popular view.
That's a very popular view, and there is a clear ambition to rebuild a temple, and even along the lines of Ezekiel's temple is a sort of popular idea there. So, absolutely, I mean, it's good to think about what that might look like, and obviously, the temple being built in a millennial kingdom, it then depends on that particular view of the millennium, and there are a number of different millennial. Well, there's three main millennial views.
Yes,
and this is held to by evangelicals. So so even there, we're working at a level where there are different theories and views.
This is where we've, in going through in this new series of Thrive Deeper, this is our first run in the book of Ezekiel, where we go, oh my goodness, there's a whole, what is, called in theology, the eschatology, the study of end times, the study of the future things, the finishing of these things. Where we get into major different views about future prophecy.
And I think it's important to say that, for some people who have been within the one tradition, have only ever heard one option, or that presented one way. Yeah. It could be a shock to hear, that there are
other ways.
And to hear me saying, well, that's a theory, and because I think to a lot of people, so, no, but that's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
But there are different approaches to that actually, and I'm not talking about among liberal scholars who discard the Bible. No, I mean among Bible believing evangelical scholars. There are a number of different approaches.
And even if you go through the history of the church, for the last 2,000 years, and hear what the leaders of again Bible believing passionate Christians throughout the centuries have interpreted these books and these chapters in multitudes of ways.
That's right, and it's not. I mean, what we agree upon are the big picture items. We agree about the return of Christ and the major major doctrinal tenets, of the faith that we agree on that are just part of what I would refer to as Christian orthodoxy.
Yes.
That, we can all agree, but how that works and what that looks like in the specifics.
And how it fits onto a chart on a wall.
That's right. There are different views. And I want to acknowledge that my desire here, particularly in this context, is to allow for those different views, but to try to bring us back actually to that unifying, the meaning of the text that I think we can be unified under.
And like I've heard you say this very often, Matt, and this is often, even when we're talking just, ourselves, I will fall into my tradition of being the literalist, of being the dispensationalist, of being the man with the chart on the wall with dates on it, and I can point to different verses. And it's that strong literal desire of the admonition that the Bible says, you want to be an approved workman of, how to put the Bible together, you want to be able to understand and be able to cut, take this part and put it with that part. Okay, this is how it works. And there's that real strong desire that the Scripture gives us to do that. And you will often go, hey, that's fantastic. But what do you think that the people were reading it at the time were taking into it? It's great for you 2,000 years later to have a chart on your wall. Yeah. But what was the intention? What's God's intention here of giving it? And I think when we come to the Ezekiel and saying, what's God's intention in these passages? What was Ezekiel's intention at this?
That's right, It is, and ultimately it is to sow this message of hope that the temple is going to be restored.
Yeah.
And it's going to be wonderful. And, there are a number of symbols, including the river of this beautiful image of the river of life, in the temple, which connects then directly with Revelation chapter 22, which says, Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb down the middle of the street of the great city. Yeah. So we get in Revelation 21 and 22, we have a vision of a new Jerusalem. Yeah. That interestingly, it says there that has no temple, because it says that because God Himself will be their temple.
Just as in Ezekiel, even though it talks about a temple, he finishes off calling the place of this land, saying, and the name of this place is the Lord is there, or the Lord is here, or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. And which connects with what it says. Yeah. So actually, at the end of Revelation, there is a temple, but the Lord is saying, "I am that temple." I am that temple.
Yeah.
And so it connects with what we see then with the symbolism of Revelation, 21 and 22, the river of the water of life. So there certainly are symbols at work here, and they're symbols that point to something beyond a physical reality. I've said that, and we can all agree on that. To what extent there is also going to be a literal historical fulfillment, something solid. It's whether there will be, when there will be, how there will be.
It's open to interpretation.
Is open to interpretation. Yeah. But I think the important thing for Ezekiel's message is that he is pointing these people forward to something wonderful that God is going to do. Everything that they have lost, and this is the point, is going to be restored to them 100-fold. It's going to be much more wonderful. They've lost so much, but God is saying, as you turn back to me, and as you are restored, it's going to be much, much better than it was before. And I think that is where we finish then at the end of the book of Ezekiel.
Do we interpret that for ourselves the same way? What do we take away with it now? Or do we just think, isn't that nice for the exiles?
What we can take away now is the significance of the symbolism, because in any case the temple is a symbol, whether it's even in its literal historical form, the temple is a symbol, and it points us toward greater realities. And I think we need to allow this, rather than us just fussing about with theoretical, historical interpretations. What could this look like? And now, actually, that's a good question. What does this mean for me now? lest I just busy myself with theories about what this looks like in history, actually read this message and the symbols and the vision, and recognize actually that there is a great reality here that we are already participating in a very significant sense. We are part of this great temple. The glory of the Lord has returned to this temple. We are stewards of the glory of the Lord. He lives within our heart. I mean, these are wonderful truths, and sometimes I think we get so used to them that we forget how wonderful they are. Now, in the book of Ezekiel, people are listening to this thinking, imagine that. Are you seriously, God is going to dwell within all of their hearts and the glory of the Lord's going to actually, we now have that reality, and I think we can lose a sense of the wonder at it, actually. And it becomes far too ordinary a thing. And this is something actually we need to recognize, that we are participating in something wonderful, something that has been foretold, and something that is going to even.
You know what I learned in that conversation is that the future and God's future for us is about new levels of restoration that we can't even comprehend. This concept of restoring us into what he wanted us to be all along is just this beautiful concept that's coming through in the book of Ezekiel. Now, next episode 6 is the next one, the final one on the book of Ezekiel through this run of Thrive Deeper. Excited to wrap it all up, and then we get to move into the book of Daniel. We've got a little bit of that coming up as well, so excited to have you with us. Now, make sure, as we always say, head over to our home online. That is at thrivetoday.net.au, and that is where you can find everything that you need to know about this podcast. Well, until next week, I've been DJ Payne. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to Thrive Deeper. If you have questions you would like answered, contact us on Facebook at facebook.com/thrivedeeper, or at the Thrive Today website, where you can also subscribe to the Thrive Daily Bible Reading Guide. That's at thrivetoday.net.au. Until next time, thrive.